So they're both there in the same time. Do you make sense? And I don't know if you heard it, but the very last time I played, I don't know if any of you who know the melody or know the lyric, the very last time I played it was a very different mood, right? So we're going to talk about mindset today. And let me ask you first a question. Talk to your neighbor and just tell them, what is the greatest breakthrough you've had around the inner game of improvisation? Like what happens inside your mind and body and being? And what is your greatest challenge in relationship to that? And I'm talking about, it's one thing to play the notes and the swing and to get the changes right, but I'm talking about what's happening inside you. Are you constantly stuck in your thoughts? Are you anxious? Are you so in your own place that you can't pay attention to everything that's going on? So what's been your biggest breakthrough in terms of your mindset? And what is your greatest challenge in terms of that? So share that with your neighbor, then we'll share with you.
I think maybe a breakthrough for me
Please pause if you would. Please pause. The way we'll work is when you see me raise my hand, then raise your hand in your conversation at that point. So, biggest breakthroughs you've had. Let's get a sample of what's happened. What have been your breakthroughs in terms of your mindset? Yes, sir.
I was just getting ready to comment about watching the concert last night and the confidence with that Joe had when he played. I mean, it was super clarity, and just even though a lot of it was definitely high level, but even the simpler things that you could get your head around, it was so clear and so confident and such a powerful attitude in his playing that even if I'm playing something similar, if you don't have that confidence in it, everybody can feel that.
Absolutely. Yeah, beautiful. Because emotions and states of being are contagious.
Sure.
We all pick up on it. What else? Yes, breakthrough.
Being able to play a bunch of tunes without having music in front of you.
Sweet. Good for you. Good for you. That's really important because then the music that's inside you can come out. You're not constantly focused outward. Breakthroughs in mindset. Yes, Jeff.
Well, this was one that you actually made happen. You asked me to solo with you, and I was afraid to touch a note because I was so unprepared. And
They'll all be wrong. You never know, right?
yeah, and you said, can you scat? And I said, sure. And so I scat with you, and it was free, and it was good. And then you said, play with your scatting at the same time. And then it was about half as good. And you said, is your hand following your voice or your voice following your hand? And I said, well, my voice is following my hand, and they're both thinking I have to get to B flat in 2 measures. And you said, switch it around and have your hand follow your voice. And at that moment, it was the first time I experienced a sense of freedom in improv.
Really, really important because there's this paradox because you need to learn chords and scales and chord changes and all that stuff because that's part of the language. It's like learning how to speak English or German or French, right? You have to learn that. You have to learn the grammar and the vocabulary. But there's also important to know where the music comes from. Where does the music come from? Does the music come from chords and scales and notes? The music doesn't come from anywhere outside of you. The music comes from this infinite river of creative expression that is inside you in any given. In fact, let's play with that for a minute. world. So just like you would scat sing in the shower or at home or whatever, in your car, just let it flow. 1, 2, yeah, we'll do that with a head and a couple courses. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now I want you to imagine whoever your favorite player is on your instrument is soloing on this tune. I want you to hear him in your mind. So start hearing. It could be Miles Davis or Coltrane or Mike Tracy or whoever your favorite musician is on your instrument. And imagine that they're soloing on the blues. Close your eyes if that makes it easier. Turn the volume up a little bit. Now very softly begin to sing what you're hearing. Just gotta sing softly. Now pantomime as you're scat singing as though the instrument's in your hands. A little louder, please. A little louder, please. Keep that money. So what's happening to the music that you're hearing when you're singing? What are you noticing? Is it different than when you started?
Yes.
What's different about it?
Journalism.
Okay, more specifically.
It's more complex.
It's more complex. What else are you noticing?
It's simpler.
It's, okay, simpler. So the quality of the musicianship is better, what you're saying, of what you're, yes.
It's more in tune with what you're playing.
Okay, good. What else are you noticing? What else began to shift? Yes, sir.
It's freer.
Freer. Okay, good. How many of you felt freer? Okay, so what you're doing is in those 3 steps, we're connecting with this river of music that is always available. It's like in the air of your subconscious, always available for you to tap into. What blocks it is our preoccupation with self. How I look, what I'm playing, what the chords are, all of that. So you've got to internalize the chord structures and the scales and everything, but there's also a place where you and you are listening internally and translating what you're hearing internally in the instrument. And there's no gap between the two. That means you're not having to think about where your fingers go. You're not thinking about, oh, what will Mike or Shelley or whatever think of me when I play with this? What will my colleagues whatever do? You're just in the presence of the flow of the music. Does that make sense? That's your job. What other breakthroughs have you experienced? Yes, sir.
So Chris Spock, the saxophonist, has a phrase where he says that he's often said that he, she had to learn moment theory and all the solos and blah blah blah. There was to know, and when he gets to the stage, he forgets about it and plays. And it sounds like
those of us who are a little bit more vintage in our years, you know. Older than,
In our years, I love it.
older than 30 or 40, right? We're coming into a desire to improve our capacities, but we're also aware that time is limited. And so it's not like we're 17 and we can say, okay, I'm going to spend the next 10 years learning every solo that John Coltrane ever played so I can become a virtuoso, right? So we have to find a way of balancing based on your own skills, your goals, etc. I worked with a lady once who was 85 years old, pianist, who wanted to learn to play well. And she was overwhelmed with the vast amount that there was. And she realized, she's like, I'm not going to be here forever. I just want to learn. And so we got down to what she really wanted to learn is there were 10 tunes that she wanted to learn where she could sound sort of like some kind of combination between Mary McPartland and Ellis Larkins, and I forget who the other person, but another, you know, sort of businessman's bounce, business lady's bounce person. And so for a year, we worked on 10 tunes. And she got to the point where she felt really good about how she played those 10 tunes, and that was it. So the first thing you need to do is get really clear on, a year from now, what are my goals? What do I want to accomplish? Right? And once you have a sense of that, then you can assess more appropriately what are the technical foundations you need to work on. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah.
It's really about balancing the immensity of the goal with the time frame.
So you begin with your in mind, kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. When I was 17, no, it was early, later than that. I was about 19 years old. And I made what I call a mastering mandala, which was a mind map of the musicians who I admired the most and the qualities I wanted. I'm like, Oscar Peterson was on there because I wanted this, there was something about his articulation. And then there was, of course, Bill Evans. There was something about the phrasing, and then there was Keith Jarrett, whose ecstasy, you know. And then there was Errol Garner. And I forget who else was on it, but there were like maybe 7 or 8 pianists, along with the qualities I wanted. I lost that piece of paper for about 20 years. When I found it, and I went back, it was like, oh! I could see and feel in my own playing how that chart had dictated the next 20 years of development. So beginning with the end in mind, absolutely. Think about right now, it's like, okay, qualities, tone, ballad approach, bebop playing, or whatever, rhythm, whatever. Who do you emulate? And where do you want to be a year, 2, 5 years from now? And then plan back from that. The same thing we do in any other area. Other breakthroughs in mindset. What other breakthroughs have you had? Yes.
So, in my instrument,
Which is?
a bass. So I've kind of learned to understand how a North Star can be of value to me, as opposed to a hindrance.
Yes.
So you talk about influences. My early influences, actually on the electric instrument, always felt out of reach because I was thinking about exactly what they were doing,
Right.
as opposed to an understanding of how they juxtapose their influences and their passions onto their instrument. And when I look at it now, many years later, I can have a North Star that is to understand like McBride's approach to the instrument,
Right.
but I'm also old enough to understand that I'm too old to be McBride,
Right.
so I don't have to worry about that. So right, so I left that, being McBride, is that a documentary? Anyway.
Yeah, probably.
Is in the rear view. For me, it's, he took funk influences and put it on mastery of, orchestral instrument. something that I can aspire to.
Exactly. So what you're looking at is you're looking at themes and overall patterns.
Yes.
Yeah, because and that's really important, because again, when we get vintage, 30, 40, whatever, it's really easy to get stuck in the mindset that was appropriate at 17 or 21, but it's not appropriate at 40 or 50 or 60, right? And exactly, because what happens is, otherwise, when I was 19, I was at Rutgers University the last couple of years, and I spent every Saturday all day long transcribing Bud Powell on a cassette recorder with no piano and a pitch pipe. Okay? And at the end of the year, I had internalized, a couple of hundred solos in that language, but that's not necessarily what I would do at 35 or 40. So it's important to realize what ships have sailed, and again, where you're going. And the beautiful thing about now, that's different than when many of us were kids, is that you have YouTube and you have computer-based transcription service mechanisms that can actually narrow that gap. You can learn much more material and assimilate it more powerfully. Other mindsets, yes, sir.
I'm a very old man, and some years ago I was at the Ebersol camp, and JB Dice said, I'm a bass player, and he
Yes.
said, play melodies on your bass. So I started doing that in different chords, in different,
Yes.
yeah. And at some point, I felt that I didn't have to think, it started flowing.
Exactly.
Because I know it's the intervals, of course. It's always an interval. Where is the next tone? And that became more
Good.
automatic.
Good. And it's really, really important. Something else that you said is the idea that the way that learning happens, right? We set a learning goal and we start learning the skill, just like Mike with standing on your head and doing yoga or whatever, or a martial art or whatever. And the first period of learning that skill, you always feel like an idiot. You always feel like an idiot. It's always awkward. That's the nature of learning anything new. If you didn't feel like an idiot, you aren't learning anything new, right? That's the nature of it. But then you have these cycles that basically look like this. You have long plateaus and sudden leaps to a new level. And long plateaus, sudden leaps to a new level. Long plateaus. If you give up during the plateau, you don't get the goodies. You have to present. Sometimes that plateau is only a day or two, right? But the nature of the learning process is awkward, 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 a little less awkward, awfully awkward. Oh, now it's easy. And if you don't understand that, you'll stop. Or even more dangerously, you'll beat up on yourself. And you'll say, oh, it's not easy, so I'm doing something wrong. Maybe you aren't breaking it down sufficiently, but that feeling of it not being easy is normal part. So some of you probably in your combos this week, you feel like, oh my God, where are these changes are going? That's okay, because that's the nature of learning. And you want to stay, there's three zones. There's a comfort zone, there's a chaos zone, where the comfort zone is where you're doing what you know is safe. Chaos zone where you're just totally freaked out, but then the learning zone's in the middle. So you want to be outside your comfort zone, but not so far outside that you go into chaos. So you stay in that middle place, and that keeps you in a state of flow and learning. Make sense? Other mindset shifts you experience, yes, sir, and then.
I think for me, just playing, in a sense, I've been practicing and going through scales and chords and scales and chords, and I've been playing songs. And I just started as I was doing, one of the musicians last year did this, where he just came in and did a master class. So he was warming up, and then he started playing songs. And that just has kind of clicked for me in the past couple of months, where I just start warming up, and then I'm kind of listening to, as I'm doing the scales, like what songs am I hearing, and then just playing the song, and then go back into, so it's playing in a sense, and I guess just trying to get to a voice, which I think is the challenge. What is my voice?
Yeah, well, the thing about your voice will emerge as you learn to trust yourself. Not only musically, but in every area. just like you look in the mirror, there's nobody who looks like you, for better or for worse, right? Okay? Look in the mirror and say, okay, I've got this. I used to have hair, I've got this face, this nose, whatever. Your musical voice is just as unique and just as organic to you. The catch is you need to do a certain amount of basic development to get there. But then you also need to come to a place, a reckoning, that's about who you are and what you want to express. When I was in my 20s, and I was working in New York, and I was playing with great people, Johnny Griffin and Out of the Blue and Kenny Garrett, and all these wonderful people, I really loved that. At the same time, what was cool, hip, and everybody was doing at the time was playing like Kenny Kirkland and McCoy Tyner, whatever. That was never me. I was like, my heroes were Bud Powell, Oscar Peterson, Errol Garner. And I'm in the McCoy and Chick era, right? And it took me a long time to realize that, okay, although I could understand this language, it's not really me, And realizing that, I was more, and this is no disrespect to any of that mode of jazz improvisation, but I was more interested in Renaissance choral music than I was in learning polyphonic, no, not polyrhythm, the pentatonic scales over the blues progression, But for a long time, my own fear and wanting to fit in the crowd and shame and everyone got in the way of that. When I finally realized, let me incorporate, you might have heard, like some of you go, and I realized that, okay, that's the music inside me. And I need to be okay with sharing that music. So you'll find your voice, but it's about trusting yourself as well as and listening, okay, like this is the song that wants to come through me in this moment. Trust that. Mindset, sir.
The question for me, and I'm just using this as an analogy. I can't skate, okay? Like
What's your instrument?
a saxophone.
Okay.
So when I say I can't skate, it's like I have no, I'll say imagination. And so I look at my career, I'm a lawyer, right?
Okay.
So like when I was a kid, I would take the Bible, not the Bible, I'm sorry, the dictionary to bed, and I would read the dictionary. It's kind of like I always wanted to be a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
So I love the words.
Yes.
And when I went to law school, I already had the tools. Because I'm reading 1,000 pages a week.
Exactly.
All right? And so when I go to court, I can do
It's
my
there.
thing.
Yeah, internalize.
And so now I'm trying to draw the same analogy with what it is that I'm trying to pursue today. But at my age, again, I've got mental fog.
Yeah.
It's difficult to memorize things, so I go through those frustrations. And then on top of that, I go back to I can't scat, so to speak. And it's the same thing as I don't have rhythm. And so it's kind of like frustrating as you play the piano asking us to scat. I'm repeating over and over again, these little phrases that I can't seem to break out of and be more creative too. So while I understand this process, I need to understand how to break through that.
Got it.
And
Yeah, so you know how you took the dictionary to bed, right? Who's your favorite saxophone player?
John Coltrane.
Okay. Do you like, what's your favorite John Coltrane album?
Well, my favorite is My Favorite Things. That was a song. I forget the name of the album.
So on that song, if I played the record for you right now, could you sing along with anything that is played on that record, any of the solos?
Let's change it to My One and Only Love. can't sing.
Do you like playing that song on your saxophone?
But I love playing that song on the saxophone.
So here's what I would do if I were you. And I'm gonna give you a 30 seconds advice in a 3-hour conversation, right? You love words. Bless you. You understand words just like in your heart, your gut, your soul. 2 things I would suggest you do. Number 1, you have a list of songs that you enjoy.
Yes.
Make a list of songs and choose one of those songs. And it could be a song like My One and Only Love with great lyrics or whatever. But choose one song. And for about a month, I want you to collect about 10 people's interpretation of that song. Okay? And every day, you sing along with a little bit of that record until you're assimilating that the same way you're assimilating the dictionary. Because then part of your issue is, of course, fear, which is something we all deal with. But part of your issue is you don't have enough stored data stored in the way that your brain picks it up. So if you, as somebody who's analytical, take one song, find again 5 to 10 recordings of that, put them on all the time in the background, and then once a day spend 30 minutes to an hour going through them, learning to sing the solos on those songs, and then begin to play. You do that after about a month, you'll store enough data in your brain for it to start coming out, right? Because what comes out is a direct result of what's gone in. And if you haven't had a good system for putting it in, it's going to be more difficult. Does this help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that, I guess that's part of my issue. I'm not narrowing down
Exactly.
my
Yep.
scope.
Yep, exactly.
I'm trying to eat the whole elephant.
Yeah, I mean, what you're trying to right now, you're trying to memorize the whole dictionary.
Right.
Yeah.
Just letter A, the first page, okay?
Harry, follow up on your suggestion to David.
I'm sorry?
Follow up on your suggestion to David
Yeah.
to listen to 5 versions of the song. There's different kinds of listening. There's listening in my car when I'm driving. And then there's listening in my my man cave at home, which is me and my speakers.
How many of you have a man cave? Okay, I got one too. I love it.
So,
Just me and the music and the cave. It's like it's literally basement.
so I'm trying to, I like what you offered to David. I'm trying to, I'll just peel it back a little bit for myself, my own utilization. What type of listening?
Totally different kinds of listening.
Talking about, exactly.
Yeah. There's a 3-level theory of how we learn things. It goes soak, sort, synthesize. We soak, we absorb. Synthesize, babies learn languages, how we learn anything. We absorb a lot, and then we begin to sort it into patterns, and we synthesize those patterns, right? So what you want to do is you want to have your soaking music, where you just listen in the car, just for fun. But then you want to have very specific listening sessions where you are analyzing and imitating. So you analyze, and just take a little time. This is like what I did when I was transferring to Bud Powell with a cassette, literally with a cassette machine in a pitch pipe. You want to take one, and nowadays you can get things transcribed or slowed down on YouTube or whatever. But you take one little section of the recording, and you sing along with it, and you go back and forth until you can do that pretty flawlessly. Then you take the next section. And it might take you a couple of weeks to learn 2 choruses of 12-bar blues. But that's okay. Because what you're doing then is you're starting to sort and synthesize. You're starting to code it in your own brain in a way that you can replicate it later. Make sense? Good. Mindset breakthroughs. And I'm going to do a couple of exercises. Yes? Did you? I'm sorry. Somebody else raise their hand?
All right.
Sir.
One thing that helps now between learning tunes and so forth is the app AnyTunes Pro.
Good.
I can bring tunes into it and slow it down. It's the same pitch and everything, but I can slow it down and therefore process it.
Beautiful. Good.
Bring it back up forever.
Yes.
I'd say what's helped me this week is I've been studying my chords, or and starting to study the chords, studying the scales. But I always played by ear, which is awesome when it works. so awesome when it doesn't work, which happens a lot more than I'd like, especially in improvising. And so if I was trying to think about the notes that were match the scale to match the chord, my creativity just went right out the door. I was, okay, I'll play one note. So this week has been helpful in the sense of just playing a lot, and the advice I've gotten to just start to put those two things together.
Yeah, that's also a part, so it's like a neurobiological process where you are learning how to, it's basically like left and right brain. You're learning how to sort the data in such a way that it comes out coherently. You gotta do both. Absolutely. Any other, yes, sir?
Yeah, I had lessons where the teacher was saying, okay, what we're gonna do on improvising, I want you to tell a story. I want you to leave your house, I want you to go to Myers, then I want you to go down to the Eastern Market, and then go downtown, and then I want you to end up right here. Now tell the story. And then you're like, what? Well, to tell the story, you know, I gotta go on I-75, and, you know, so how do you feel about, you know, in our mind, telling the story as we're improvising? Do you?
Well, I think your teacher was very well intentioned, but they misunderstood their instruction based on your level of understanding, right?
Okay.
And so, if the idea of telling a story by going visually to different places appeals to you, by all means do it. That never resonated with me. You know, I can understand developing motives. I can understand having a narrative arc to the solo, but the idea of this mental track, my brain doesn't work that way. So I say you adapt the instruction based on how your brain works and what makes sense for you.
Okay.
You know,
Very good.
yeah, that story stuff kind of makes me cringe a little bit. And for some people have movies in their mind and that's how they think. That's great, but it doesn't for me. I guess I have spreadsheets in my mind. You know. Yes.
My breakthrough this week, and I'll give the analogy that Mike Tyson, the boxer, said, that you can have all the plans and strategies until you get punched in the mouth.
Yes.
And that's exactly the way I've felt because, you know, practicing chords, scales, all these type of phrases, and then you get in the moment, it's like, it's gone. And, you know, I guess it's a matter of internalizing more or
Yeah, again, it's about knowing where you are, where you're going, what you need to do to get there, and then balancing between technical mastery and just pure self-expression. You know, again, I used to say this when I teach at the jazz camps when they were years ago. Some of you have actually been at the workshop when I said this, you know. It's kind of like, imagine you were a classical composer, and night one, you heard Mahler's second. Night 2, you heard Beethoven's ninth. Night 3, you heard Mozart, 40th Symphony, whatever. And you were expecting yourself, after having composed 3 pieces, one of which was to, at the end of that week, be on par with those composers. That's not only unrealistic, it's insane. You know? So you want to recognize, okay, here's where I am, here's where I want to go, here's these people who are doing this on this level, that's great. But what is appropriate for me? You know, I've known folks who basically spent a year just basically focusing on 5 or 6 tunes and learning those tunes in different keys, different styles, whatever, and that was appropriate for them. I've known people who, you know, I really like all this bebop stuff, but I want to be like Ben Webster. I just want to play a beautiful ballad with an amazing tone, so I focus on that. You know, it's important that you separate your experience here or any kind of place where you're in a cornucopia of possibility with what appeals to you, what you want to work with. You know? Yes. Jeff.
So the same advice was given to me about telling a story, and I interpreted it differently. Like, I don't think of a story that actually has a plot or has, you know, action in it. I think of the music taking a shape. Like if I'm playing a song, that there's an arc of
There you go.
complexity
Right.
and dynamics.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's how your brain interprets the idea of the story
Yeah.
differently. Yeah. Yes. my own judgment of it, you know? So it's like the idea of being amazing, I mean, I used to think about that when I was like a teenager or whatever, but yeah, it's like that. I think that there's also something about the internal goals we have and how much of those goals related to our own fulfillment, how much of those goals are related to impressing or pleasing other people,
Right.
you know? Because I don't care if y'all think I'm amazing, it's nice, but I mean, this is gonna sound really bizarre, but I was playing with these two guys last night, and we're just enjoying each other. You were sort of eavesdropping on our conversation. There's no disrespect to you, I love you, but I mean, if you hadn't been there, we still would have had a great time. Yes.
So, just when you were saying that you felt you have never played an amazing solo, I guess one of my breakthroughs was that, I know I need to, there's some stuff I need to work on, but I always want to listen to myself, but listen to myself and hoping I'm sounding like somebody else. So like when she was saying about the amazing solo or whatever, do you ever get, so I guess do you ever really get to a point where you can listen to yourself and you're like, oh my God, who is that? Sonny Rollins said he was in the grocery store and he was pushing his cart and they're playing the music. He was just like, wow, pretty awesome solo. I was like, wait a minute, that's me.
Yeah.
Playing on the Rolling Stones album.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, I've had that experience, but well,
But do you ever get to a point where you're like, wow, who is that?
well, let me tell you my personal story. I'm 6'9", as you see. I was this tall when I was 14. And once a year for about 15 years, I would crash into the top of a door or a chandelier or something, and I have traumatic brain injury. And it reached its worst point in the late 1999, 2000. I had some other issues of physical health, but I remember in 1999, I sat at the piano one day for 10 minutes trying to find, okay, I know I'm playing C major, what's that next note? No. It took me 10 minutes to find a C major chord. And I went through a period of time, because of the traumatic brain injury, I had post-concussive trauma, where I had a significant amount, I weighed 40 pounds less than I do now. I had a significant amount of fine motor coordination. I had lots of aphasia. I stuttered a lot. I still stutter a bit, but it's not as bad as it was. And I had to face the reality that I would never be able to play again. And so then when they started to come back about 2 or 3 years later, as a result of lots of things, I found myself, my motivations for playing were very different. Where when I was younger, it was like, okay, I want to be good so I can be better than that person. And then it was, I want to be excellent for excellence sake. But something I started doing when I began to be able to play was playing for like dying people, okay? Playing for people in hospice and playing for people in that way. And my entire purpose for making music transformed to, I want to connect with people. And now, the mere fact that I can play the piano, coming from 15, 20 years ago when I had that period, not very long, but a period of not being able to play, I'm just grateful. I'm just in a place of profound gratitude that things come out and that they touch other human beings. And the amazing or the comparison, all that stuff died. And I'm grateful it died.
Amen.
Because it no longer has a place to hook on inside of me. You know, sir.
Yeah, Harry, you've spoken.
I want to get the guy in front of you just because I want you to, I appreciate your comments. I want to make sure everybody else has a chance to talk. Sir.
You know, I think a very simple breakthrough is you started the talk saying, when you improv, are you nervous or in your head too much? And that's where I am. Totally in my head where I almost don't enjoy it.
Okay. I'm gonna say one thing about that. Let me give you a practice. Right? Let me give you a practice first. It's very paradoxical. Part of what's happening when you're in your head is your sympathetic nervous system's activated. Fight, flight, freeze. That part of you, which will absolutely destroy your capacity to perform. So one of the practices that you need to learn how to do, I used to have stage fright that was so debilitating. Mike, I'm concerned about time because we're almost at 11:15. Can we go 11:30? Okay, good. Okay, good. Yeah, good. I need 20 minutes to complete these. The stage fright was so bad that I wouldn't sleep for a week. I'd throw up before performance. I'd throw up for 4 days. And 2 days before performance, I get, any of you know what tachycardia is? Yeah. Rapid heartbeat. It's like 160 beats a minute for 2 days. It was just, I figured if I were going to be a professional musician, I'd be dead in 6 months. And part of what was happening is my sympathetic nervous system was just wild, right? So the first thing you need to do is you need to learn how to calm that down. That's why physicians prescribe beta blockers for professional musicians often. I don't recommend that. But what the beta blockers do is they calm that sympathetic system. So here's some super easy ways to do it. I want you to take a moment, and I want you to yawn very slowly and mindfully. Don't be afraid. Follow the yawn with a stretch. And really pay attention to the yawn. Do it a couple of times. Oh, yawn and stretch. Oh. And follow the stretch with some soothing touch. You can touch your face or your arm. You can give yourself a shoulder rub. Rub your belly if you want, whatever. But just some kind of soothing, relaxing touch. We're going to do that 3 times. Yawn mindfully and slowly. Stretch, stretch, stretch. Stay out of your head and actually do the exercise, sir. Yeah, stay out. You'll get it. Just, and then close the yawn with some kind of soothing touch. Feel like your hands are instruments of comfort as you're doing that. One more time, just yawn and stretch. Make noise if you want. Close the stretch with some. Continue that touch like giving yourself a hug just for a moment. And then rest your hands on your heart. Take a breath. Keep your awareness in the area of the heart just for a moment. And rest. Notice how you feel. What's different? What feels different in you as a result of that? More relaxed, more calm. What else?
It's like you've released something.
Yeah, release something. What else?
Not tight anymore.
And what's happening in your thoughts, though?
I'm okay.
They're quieter, right? Yawning is incredibly powerful. It's a neuroregulator. And when you yawn, 3 things happen. You lower activity in what's called the default mode network of your brain, the imagination network. That's the part of your brain that goes crazy when you're worrying and regretting things, right? You increase activity in the salience network, which brings you into the present moment in your physical body. And you increase activity in the executive network, which allows you to focus. So you get all 3 of those benefits just by yawning. When you stretch, you force yourself to be physical in the present moment. You can't do this and be thinking about past and future, right? And then when you give yourself some kind of soothing, comforting touch, you lower your brainwave frequency from beta, which is total focused alertness, to more theta and deltoids, which allow you to relax. So yawn, stretch, and soothe is a quick way to get out of sympathetic activation into parasympathetic. Okay? And you might do that a dozen times a day. You might do it before you perform. You might do it when you're driving or whatever. Because yawning also is a thermal regulator in your brain. It will cool your brain down or warm your brain up depending on what you need. In fact, if a physician sees a baby in the womb and they don't yawn, that's a signal there's something wrong. Okay? So yawning is not just when you're sleepy. It's not rude, so that you can do that. So you need to regulate that. The second thing you need to do is reframe your sense of why you're doing it. There's a study by, not a study, but a story about Van Gogh. And Van Gogh was in his young, in his early 20s, and he was in his apartment in Paris or London, wherever it was. And he looked outside one day and he saw a beautiful starry night and the moonlight was striking a street lamp, and he thought, oh my God, it's beautiful. So Van Gogh was writing a letter to his brother Theo, and he flipped the letter over and he drew a picture of that beautiful moonlight. And at the bottom of the page, he said, I had to share this with you because it's so beautiful. You must have that kind of motivation when you play. It's like, oh my God, this song. It's so beautiful. But Powell. Or Bach. Check this out. This is cool. You have to have I'll give you an example. primitive device in my pocket. It's called a flip phone. I mean, this thing, all it does is calls and text messages. Isn't that amazing? It does nothing. It's completely dumb, right? What do you think? Have you seen one of those before? Anyhow, just in the moment when I pulled it out, were you thinking about you? Or me? What were you thinking about? This cool thing. So when music becomes, hey, I have this cool thing. I have the most amazingly delicious chicken soup you ever had. Would you like some? My chicken soup is called How Deep is the Ocean, right? So when your mindset is only about let me share beauty with you, and that's part of what happened when I got really sick and I lost that ability. I was playing for people who were dying. It's like, oh, well, Roger here has pancreatic cancer, and he's going to be around for maybe 2 more weeks, and he loves Gershwin. So let me play someone who, let me play a Gershwin song for Roger. I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not thinking about Roger. We're celebrating Gershwin in that moment. When your musical experience becomes, let me celebrate this with you because I love it and I want you to love it too, then you will find that much of your stage fright goes away. The third thing, which we'll do right now, is when I was really struggling with stage fright, my internal self-image of myself was, oh, I'm going to sit at the piano and screw up, and everybody's going to laugh at me, and I'll feel terrible, and it'll be miserable. That was the picture in my mind whenever I play. And there were a lot of reasons for that, etc. But the picture in my mind was one of death, doom, and destruction. Some of you are carrying that kind of image. Maybe because of something in the past. Maybe you had an embarrassing experience when you were a kid, or maybe but whatever. We all have those kinds of things, right? It's important that you learn to transform your internal image of yourself as a musician to one of greater confidence and inner freedom. You do that through imagery, through mental rehearsal, through visualization, through practice. Before we do a practice, I want to share something powerful with you. Back in the 90s, there was a study that was done that was wanting to understand how the brain transforms when we learn motor skills. And hi, Gabe. I just saw you back there. Nice to see you. And they took a group of people and they had them practice basic scales on the piano for 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. And they did a brain scan at the beginning and at the end, and they basically checked the part of their brain that controlled fine motor coordination because they wanted to see what actually physically happened in the brain when you actually did the thing. So they measured the beginning and the end, beginning and 2 weeks later, and what do you think they saw in that part of the brain? They saw new neural connections, new growth, new activity, physically. They did the same thing with a group that only practiced mentally for 2 hours a day, 2 weeks. Guess what happened? The same level of brain growth, which means basically there's an aspect of your brain that cannot tell the difference between something that's real physically experienced and something that's vividly imagined. So you can literally imagine yourself into new brain circuitry and a new way of being. Most powerful discovery in the history of humanity, I think. That we can literally change, we can transform the invisible into the visible. We can change the literal structure and function of parts of our brain as a result of what we see, feel, and imagine internally. This is the science behind mind-body medicine. In fact, there's a study. I do workshops online for people who are dealing with various kinds of illnesses. I've dealt with a lot of that, about how to mobilize their mind and body. And there's a study that was done back in late 90s, early 2000s, where they took 2 groups, and they had both groups doing imagery about increasing a certain immunoglobulin in their brain to boost their immune system. And the first group did the imagery and they got better. But the second group actually understood the physiological mechanism. They actually could see what was going on. And they had like 2 or 3 times the increase in that particular chemical in their body because they could see clearly what was happening. The more clearly you can begin to envision yourself as the performer you want to be, the more you will invite your brain-mind system to conform to that image. And sooner or later, just like I woke up 20 years after doing that mastering mandala and actually was playing that way, that will happen to you. So we're going to do a very brief practice. So I want you to put your feet flat on the floor. And yawn, please, and stretch. Because we need to always reset our parasympathetic system. We can't do this in fight, flight, freeze. So yawn and stretch and soothe. Oh, make noise if you want. Oh. It's okay. And when you put your hands from the rest, allow your eyes also to close or your eyes to look downward, kind of an open gaze, either way. Close is better. If that's not comfortable, it's fine. So bring your awareness to your breath and simply notice the rhythm of your breath. Notice the sensations of breath. Notice that you're breathing. Yay! And as you allow yourself to become aware of the sensations of breath, feel the soles of your feet on the floor. Feel the chair holding you up. Feel the back of the chair supporting you. And just bring all of you into this moment, into your physical body and being. As you continue to rest in the breath, you notice any thoughts that come. Just let them go like clouds in the sky and bring your awareness back to the breath, back to the sensations of breath. What you notice as you focus on the breath that yesterday and tomorrow start to fade. Past and future begin to dissolve into this moment, which is all there is. So just resting in the breath for a moment and realizing there's nothing for you to do, there's nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to prove, no problem to solve, no scales to learn, not now. Your only task is to be here in this moment. That's good. So in a moment we're going to go to a theater in your imagination, and this is a movie theater where on the screen you're going to see a version of you that you've never seen before. This is a version of you who has absolutely mastered this craft of jazz improvisation at the highest level that you can. This version of you is completely confident and allows the music to flow through them effortlessly and easily. And this version of you lives in a place of absolute connection to the music. So I'd like you to imagine the screen in front of you now and just see the trailer of this movie. See and sense yourself, an image of you. You might be at this camp, you might be in another place in performance. But get a sense of this version of you who is absolutely connected to the music, confident, clear, grounded. Just watch that for a moment. I'll be silent. Make it real as you can. Now in your imagination, step into the movie. So you're seeing through your own eyes. You're seeing through the eyes of this version of you. You're breathing, you're feeling in their body, connection with the instrument, in the flow. Step into the movie so you're seeing from the inside out. You might feel yourself moving to the music or acknowledging the others or whatever makes this real for you. Step out, see the movie in front of you. Watch again, you're going to see more details this time as you observe this version of you performing. Notice every detail. Notice how they move, how they are connected with the music. Just observe. And once again, step into the movie. See through the eyes of this version of you. Feel the body. Feel the instrument. Feel the experience of flow completely. Turn the volume up, the colors brighter. Feel completely present to this energy, this resonance. Beautiful. Now release the image while you retain the feeling, that wonderful feeling, and say these words silently in your mind. I trust the music within me and easily allow it to flow through me. More and more, I am trusting the music within me and easily allowing it to flow through me. More and more, trusting the music within me and easily allowing it to flow through me. And you do. More and more from this day forward, you trust the music within you and you allow it to flow more and more. You balance intellectual learning with emotional expression. You allow your jazz journey, your musical journey, to unfold with ease, grace, and joy. So one more time, see that movie in front of you, of this version of you, performing at your absolute best. Observe every detail. Step into the movie, see it from the inside out. Feel the emotions, sensations. And release those images, retaining the feelings. Once again, I invite you to yawn and stretch. Open your eyes, fully awake, alert, aware, present here and now. Awake, alert, aware. Oh, make some noise if you like. Oh. Share with your neighbor what that was like. Just a few seconds. What did you notice?
Your turn.
Bingo. So what needs to happen is the image. How many of you had a fairly vivid experience of that? You know, you don't have to see the colors, but just a sense of it. What's most important is you get the feeling, not necessarily you see things. That image needs to become your closest, most intimate companion. So we spent maybe 5 or 6 minutes in that practice. What if you did that every day for 30 days? What do you think would happen to how you saw yourself as a performer? What if you did it every day for 60 days, or 90 days, or 120 days? What if you did it every day for a year? I've been doing a practice like that every day for 20 years. Just sometimes it's 3 or 4 minutes, just a glimpse. But what's important is that you continue to feed your mind with that image of the North Star. Because the more you do that, the more your brain gets conditioned to say, oh, that's your internal GPS says, oh, that's where you want to go? Okay, so here. You start getting intuitive insights about what you needed to get there. Question?
So, in my image, when you said to go inside and look through the eyes, okay, so I had on, and I don't own this, I had on this royal blue sequins dress. But I had on this royal blue sequins dress, and I was performing. And the strange thing was, as soon as I was getting ready to hit E flat, the sequins is scratching my horn. I'm like, hey, wrong dress. Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm not going to comment.
No, but the funny thing is, I've never worn a sequins dress and played my horn, but that was just fun because that's what sequins is like, scales, like fish scales.
Yeah.
And it'll lift up.
So I'm going to give you a 15-second answer to a 3-hour symbolic interpretation of that. Just enjoy that, and I would reflect on, okay, what does that blue sequin mean to you? What kind of energy does that represent? And play around with that. I've got about 2 more minutes. I have one more, so very quickly comments from you two, and then we're going to wrap things up. Yes, sir.
The vision I had was I was in this nice jacket and I was playing my horn, and it was like this powerful energy around me, and it's like I'm flowing, I'm floating, and it felt good.
Well, yeah.
It felt really good. So
Well, that's your innate musical potential giving you a signal this is where you're heading.
yeah,
Okay, so practice that.
okay,
Practice that just like you practice scales.
all right.
And more, that's what you start to become. Yes, sir.
Speaking of practice, let's say you have
Really quick.
Oh, sorry?
Really quick.
Yeah, let's say you have an hour of practice. How do you think about dividing your time between
That all depends on you, but I would say 50-50. I'd say 50-50 for place to start. Yep.
I just wanted to say that something that really helps me with this mindset is Ram Dass's novel Be Here Now.
Well, yeah.
Incredible philosopher and author, so that helps me.
So that's a perfect synchronistic dovetail to the last thing I want to share with you.
Could you, I couldn't hear what she
She said Ram Dass Be Here Now. It was written back in the 70s.
Okay,
Ram
okay,
Dass Be Here Now. I do have a book called In Tune that has a lot of all these lessons in it. You can get it on Amazon. In Tune.
I'm talking about what you're talking about now, everything.
Not so much. Probably we'll put something together at some point. Well, my non-musical gig is I train therapists in these tools. You know, like trauma release and parasympathetic, whatever. So that's the kind of thing I do separate from this. But I want to close with, one more thing? Okay. It's a poem that was written 5,000 years ago. That some of you probably know. The legend is that the sages at the river Ganges would say this poem every morning. And it speaks to, I think, the fundamental paradox of life and music. It goes like this. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. Within its brief span lie all the verities, truths, and realities of your existence. Within its brief span lie all the verities and realities of your existence. The bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is but a vision. Yesterday is but a dream, tomorrow is but a vision. But today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Yes. Look well, therefore, to this day. In other words, what I love about jazz is it forces you to be in the present moment and to trust one moment after another. And if you trust that moment, recognize mistakes are opportunities for learning, and what you're really doing, like Van Gogh, is you're just sharing beauty with another human being, your journey will be just fine. So, thank you very much. Me and Mr. Tracy met 43 years ago, about this time, at Duke University.
Yep, that's right. And it's
We were both toddlers.
And every moment that I spend with Harry is a learning session, whether it's music or about life. So what we did today certainly will help you play, but it's more about who we are.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do. So today we got combo. This afternoon.